Now it's time to introduce our speaker, Deborah Stallings. She's the President and Chief HR and EEO Strategist of HR Anew, a national human resources management, equal opportunity, and talent performance development professional services firm. She's been in business for more than 22 years, and the company supports government, corporations, and nonprofit clients and provides organization assessments, human resource management, training, and professional development, and equal employment opportunities and diversity solutions. Deborah is a business and civic leader, loves people, and works to elevate people in workplaces and communities across America. She earned an MA in Management and Leadership, a BA Business Administration from Notre Dame of Maryland University. She served as an adjunct faculty member of the School of Business at her alma mater. She's a certified senior professional in human resources by the Human Resource Certification Institute and a senior certified professional by the Society of Human Resource Management. In her spare time, which I don't know how she has any, she loves to walk in parks and she loves flowers. So I will turn this over to Deborah, who will lead us in this webinar for the next hour or so.
Great, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joanne, for that really kind and thoughtful introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with you all this morning. Thank you to the Better Business Bureau of Greater Maryland and also to Angie Barnett for this opportunity to share with you all today. So I'm going to just jump right on into the discussion and presentation today so that there's plenty of time to answer your questions. We're talking today about recruitment strategy to ensure that you're hiring the best possible employees to be a part of your organization. So whether you're hiring employees or independent contractors, that's what we're focused on today. So we'll go on to the next slide. Welcome to this session. I like to interact with the audience. So as Sam has shared, feel free to drop questions in the chat. We may be able to take some questions as we move through the discussion and presentation, but certainly there'll be time at the end as well to answer questions that you may have. But what we're focused on today is ensuring that we provide and you receive insights and smart real life strategies and actions that you can implement in your workplaces immediately. So as was shared, I have been in business for more than 20 years and worked in human resources and equal employment opportunity for more than 25 years. I serve as a senior professional and subject matter expert and advisor for most of our clients. And we do business with all kinds of entities from nonprofits to corporations and government as well. We have received a number of awards as a company. So yeah, I'm a Maryland Top 100 woman. We are one of the top top 100 minority businesses in the region. We have earned that opportunity several times over a number of years. We have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and several other accolades we've received as a company. And that's really not to boast, but just to say that, you know, you're in good company, and hopefully we will impart something today that you'll find useful. So I think you have to click one more time, Sam. Okay, great. So the outcomes of today's discussion is to talk about a strategy and plan for recruiting and hiring the right people. You know, I will tell you that there's a lot of research around this subject, and there is no perfect scenario that's going to help ensure that you get the right people. But there are some proven best practices that that can help. And one of those is having a good strategy and plan, assessing what you need, planning, creating, implementing, managing that plan, evaluating that plan, and continuing to refine your recruitment strategy and your workforce plan to ensure that it's aligned with your business mission, your strategic goals, your culture, so that you can get closer to and or achieve the business goals or the organizational goals that you have in mind. There's also some compliance kinds of things that we'll talk about. So it's important to know laws, rules, and regulations that impact recruitment and hiring and the workplace. We'll talk about some key definitions as it relates to employees versus independent contractor and a few other topics. We'll talk about position descriptions. They're not legally required by law, but it's a good best practice to have position descriptions. And we're going to talk about why that's important. We'll also talk about your rewards and recognition strategy in terms of compensation, benefits, and resources and tools that you offer to your workforce. Next slide. And here we'll also talk about the importance of writing ads that really represent your brand, your culture, and the goals that you're looking for in the candidates that you're seeking to hire. We'll talk about recruitment sources, the candidate relationships, in the interview process, the due diligence in terms of, other things you can do to verify what a candidate has shared with you during the interview process. We'll talk about evaluating your recruiting strategy and continuing to enhance it, because it should be a living, breathing document, not just something that it's created one time and it goes on a shelf, but you're looking at it to say, is this working? What's working that I want to continue? What's not working that I want to stop? Or what's not working that I want to enhance and or improve upon? And then we'll talk about the orientation and onboarding process just a little bit as well. All right, so first, a definition on what is an HR strategy. It's a plan that a business creates to manage and lead its people in a manner that, again, aligns with your vision, mission, goals, and future aspirations for your company. And so everything that we do in business, we all know this, it begins with a plan, having a good strategy and a good plan. So the same thing is true for HR. And next slide, as it relates to the recruitment strategy and plan, we want to ensure that the recruitment strategy and plan aligns with the HR plan. So we are creating a workforce plan based on what we're planning to achieve this year. So for example, at the beginning of this year, when I worked on the business strategy for HR Anew, I thought about, okay, what am I trying to achieve in terms of business goals? What kinds of resources do I need? People, technology, et cetera. And specifically, what unique position labor categories do I need to fulfill the work that we're looking to achieve? And so that's what a recruitment strategy and plan does for you. It helps you to think out in advance what it is that you need for your company to get to where you're trying to go. Now we have plans, and plans don't always, come to full fruition, but having a plan helps us to get closer to that. And sometimes as we move through the process, we make adjustments as well. So we want to have a plan that allows us to assess where we are, where we're trying to go, plan, create the strategy that we need, implement it, manage it, evaluate it ongoingly, and continue to refine and enhance it. That gives you a competitive advantage as an employer, and it'll put you ahead of the pack in your industry. Next slide. So this is a model that HR Anew uses with our clients to support ensuring we get the right people in the right position. First, the strategy that I talked about, ensuring you have, what is your culture? What is what are the values, the core values for your organization? What is your belief system? Because you can hire people that have the education, that have the experience, that have the credentials that you want, but they might not fit. They might not fit the culture of the company. They might not fit the the management and leadership style. They might not fit the working conditions. They might not fit the performance expectations. So all of these things are important. Culture is critically important in the success of an organization. If you look at companies like Southwest Airlines, you see that they have a culture that they hire to. So you can have all the credentials that you want to have, but if you're not friendly and you're not kind and you're not nice in terms of ensuring a good customer experience, you can't work for Southwest. That's one of their core values. Another core value is fun. You know, you see some of their employees in shorts when you go to the airport to fly, and you see others all dressed up and formal. So they create a flexibility in their work environment. So thinking about your culture and your core values are very important. Competency-based selection, we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. We're going to talk about the position description. Assessments, that's another area that's really important. So the research shows that there's a great amount of information that many people put on their resumes that's just not true about them. And if you have ever hired somebody, we've all had that experience, you know, where we've hired someone and they have not completely represented who they are and what they can do. And so assessments, skills tests, background checks, reference checks, all those kinds of things help us get closer to being able to confirm that the person is who they've shared with us they are. We're going to talk about the applicant sourcing process as well and your communication strategy. We'll talk about also identifying candidates who fit, as I've shared before, and then the interview process. Customer relations, again, measuring, evaluating what you do, and an applicant tracking system, which we'll talk about as well. So we can go on to the next slide. So I propose a 7-step system to our clients, and we have found this to be highly successful. So the first is strategy, and we've kind of already alluded to the importance of strategy and what's involved in a strategy. The system and process, what is your system? What are the forms and documents that you use as a part of your interviewing and hiring process? So for example, we use interview guides as a part of our process. So in addition to having our current position description, we have interview guides where we've already thought about what are the questions that we want to ask a candidate for each unique position. We've also created a candidate self-assessment. So there's some information once we reach out to a candidate and say, hey, we'd like to talk with you about a position. We send them that assessment that takes 5-10 minutes to complete, but it gives us some additional insight as it relates to their values and their soft skills and things like that. So it helps you set yourself up well for when you actually interview the person, having some additional insight and information around who you're talking with. Sourcing, that's another important part of the process. Where are you going to post your job announcements, your advertisements? You know, what kinds of people are you looking for? Do you have a diversity strategy that's a part of your process to ensure that you're attracting minorities and women and veterans and younger people and older people, et cetera, all the various generations that are in the workplace today? Because the research shows that when we have a more diverse workplace, we have more creativity, more innovation, and we can be more successful. So that diversity, that takes us to number 4, which is the diverse network. Thinking about where do we go to look for diverse candidates in these various areas that I just mentioned. The 5th step of the system is career days and job fairs. So there may be positions in your company where it makes sense to attend a career day or a job fair. Colleges and universities offer these job fairs all the time. A lot of now they've been virtual, but we're starting to see them coming back online with offering them in person. But this allows you to gain access to candidates in person in a one-stop environment, to be able to talk with them in that scenario, to showcase your brand, to offer internships, part-time positions or full-time positions to people, to connect with the alumni at a college or a university, and be open to all backgrounds and majors that you're coming in contact with. So this is one way, another way to attract diverse candidates into your organization. Assessment centers. So what is an assessment center? Well, the research shows that if we just conduct a standard interview, there's a 7% likelihood that we'll hire the right person. But when you implement various aspects of the assessment process, that goes up to as high as 54%. That was information from a research study that was conducted by the Conference Board, and they looked at employers and those who were having success with people they hired and those that weren't having as much success. So you might say, well, 54% is not that much. That's not that great, but it's certainly better than 7%. So, there's no totally 100% foolproof way of hiring the right people. But these techniques and strategies help us to get closer to getting the right people in our companies. So as I mentioned earlier, candidate self-assessment, behavioral-based interview questions, skills assessments, the reference check process, background checks, drug and alcohol testing, those are all really important. And guess what? A lot of candidates know that small businesses don't do all of these kinds of things. So that's sometimes why they will, go and apply to companies that tend to be small, medium-sized companies. So it's really important for us as small businesses to get this right so that we're not spending a lot of time and money on looking for people that aren't a good fit for our organization. Also, the new employee orientation and onboarding process is important as well. So now you've hired that wonderful person to join your company, and their experience after that is equally important. So ensuring that they have a good offer letter, that you send them all the forms and documents they need to complete, set them up for success. They have the right technology and equipment. They have an orientation where they're being introduced to the company formally, the vision, the mission, the goals, the core values, etc. They receive your employee handbook. It's reviewed with them. Questions are answered. They understand important policies and compliance information. They know what their employee benefits are. They know how to do things and get things done, and they get connected to others in the workforce in your company. So those are some important aspects of that new employee orientation and onboarding process. So these are kind of the 7 steps. If we, can take any or all of this and begin to implement it in our companies, or look at what areas we need to enhance and or improve upon, we will have greater success in recruiting and hiring the right people. Next slide. So there's some things to know as it relates to employment law compliance. There are laws, rules, and regulations that govern how we do business in every aspect of business, as you know. And so recruiting and hiring is no exception to that. And so these are some of the laws and acts and things that are really important from a recruitment and hiring process. So we have to make sure that we don't discriminate against people, as an example, based on a disability. Sometimes a person might need a reasonable accommodation that might come up in the interview process. And so we can talk about, well, what does that mean? And what should I do when someone brings up that they need an accommodation? Essentially, we want to engage in an interactive process where we understand, what does that person need to be able to perform the essential functions of the job. Now, the law does not say that you have to hire somebody that's not able to perform the job, but we do, as employers, need to consider, what are the accommodations they're asking for? Are they reasonable for our business entity, and can we do it? Employment law posters. employment law posters that are federal. There are federal ones. There are also state posters as well. So everywhere where you have an employee located, you should have employment law posters that those employees have access to. So, for example, one of the things we've done for many of our clients at HR Anew, we launched a portal in January called the HR Anew Toolbox. And we put all of the employment law posters in the toolbox so that our clients' employees can go into the toolbox and they can see any law, rule, or regulation as it relates to employment law that employers are supposed to have posted. So these are all the different kinds of compliance matters, again, as it relates to the recruitment and hiring process. Next slide. All right, so this slide here is talking about, what is an employee versus an independent contractor, because this is another area that small businesses sometimes have challenges with. So I wanted to just take a moment to explain kind of the differences. There is a 20 rules test that IRS publishes, and if anybody wants that information, you can just put your name in the chat and your email, and I'll try to capture that and then send you that information. But there's a 20 rules test to help you decide if someone is really an independent contractor. That is an area we do not want to run afoul on in business. But the common law test is essentially looking at the employment relationship as it exists. If the employer controls the work process, and that's determining by evaluating certain circumstances and factors. The realities test is looking at if an individual is economically dependent on a business for continued employment. So someone saying they're an independent contractor, but they work full-time for you, solely for you, they're probably not an independent contractor. They're probably going to be considered an employee by IRS. And then there's the hybrid test, and that looks at common law, both the common law and the realities test, to focus on who has the right to control the work process and the manner in which the work gets done. So it's an important aspect. A lot of small businesses tend to start out, especially with independent contractors, but we want to make sure that those individuals are set up in a way that it doesn't come back to haunt us as the employer, and then we end up owing employer taxes and payroll taxes and unemployment insurance taxes and things like that because people were categorized incorrectly. Next slide. I talked earlier about position descriptions, and this is a really important aspect of helping to ensure that you get the right people to join your organization. So it's important that we're getting some.
Not yet. No, not yet.
I got 3/4 of the tank, so I got plenty.
Okay, so it's important that your position descriptions are current, they're accurate, and they're aligned with your mission and strategic goals. So, don't use a position description that's 5 years old, because it's likely that that position has shifted and morphed into something else or in addition to over that period of time. So it's a good idea to ensure that that's accurate, because that's going to drive the kinds of people that are applying for the position. Now, as I said earlier, it is not a legal requirement that you have position descriptions, but it is a good best practice so that your employees, they have a roadmap. This is their strategy, their plan. This is how they know what you're expecting of them. So position descriptions are really important. Next slide. Rewards and recognition is also an important aspect of the process. So thinking about how you're going to compensate people, what benefits you're going to offer, your performance management system, career paths, opportunities for people to grow. This should be a part of your recruitment and hiring strategy and plan, because it will help you to attract and retain the right people. So looking at what are the salary ranges for that position? Once you have the position description created, you can do some research, or you can have your HR person or someone like HR Anew do that research to give you some idea of what is the salary range that you should be thinking about for each given position, so that you can establish a budget and know whether or not it's it's a position that you can manage at that given time. So that's direct compensation. Indirect pay are benefits like medical, dental, vision, prescription, 401k, 403b, life insurance, long-term disability, short-term disability, etc. So thinking about continuing education, those are benefits that employees look for. Holidays, sick leave, vacation leave, those are all benefits to think about in terms of direct pay. What can we afford, and what is going to help us to be competitive in the marketplace. I'll say a quick word on sick leave, that there are some laws that drive how much sick leave employees receive federally and or at the state level. So it's important to know that. In Maryland, I believe it's an hour sick leave for every 30 hours that an employee works. And so we want to make sure, again, that we're up on employment law compliance so that we don't run afoul there. All right, job announcements. So now we have a really good, solid position description that makes it real easy to create the job announcement. And so there are some critical elements that we're going to talk about in a moment that goes into your job announcement. But this is your advertisement. This is, how you let people know you have this position available. Whether it's an internal job announcement or an external job announcement, you're essentially putting your best foot forward to ensure that people understand what are we looking for in this position that we're seeking to fill. Next slide. So the elements in the job announcement include things like about your company, your culture, your core values. The job title is also important. Now, a word here is that sometimes companies have position titles that aren't necessarily the normal title in the marketplace. And so that title might not attract the people that you're trying to attract. So it's important to think about how you're going to advertise the position. And sometimes that means adjusting the job title in the marketplace so that you get the right people applying. But if you do make an adjustment and you have a different job title that really exists for that job, it's important at the first interview to clarify that and ensure that candidates know this is the true job title. So for example, we do business with the federal government, corporations, and nonprofits, and sometimes we'll be asked to do a search for candidates for a particular kind of position. But the title that the client is using is not the title that we know that we're going to be able to attract the right people. So we'll adjust the title for the purpose of attracting the right people, but we'll also educate them in the interview process of what the true position title is for that position, and also provide them with the position description so that everybody's clear. It's also important in job announcements to think about your keywords, because the search engines pick up those keywords, and that helps to draw people into your opportunity as well. Have a compelling introduction, include the role and responsibilities of the position. You also want to ensure that you include the soft skills information. Some of that information around your values and your culture should be embedded. Like, if customer service is really important to you, your customer's experience, that should be a part of your job announcement. You don't want somebody that's not nice or kind. You want someone that has good customer service experience. Where's the position located? In COVID-19, is it remote? Is it on site? Is it hybrid? What are the work hours? What's the classification? Is it full-time or part-time or exempt or non-exempt or hourly or contractual? What is the experience, the education, the credentials, the certifications that are required? What are the physical and mental requirements? Is there travel required? What's the salary range? What are the benefits? What are you doing as an employer to protect employees from COVID-19? You know, just a short sentence or statement that we have personal protective equipment or whatever it is that you're doing around that. That's what people want to know before they're applying for positions today. And don't make false promises. You know, under promise, over deliver is the key in your job announcements, and then ensure that they're formatted and edited really well. Recruitment sources. So there are thousands of different recruitment sources, and so you could lose your shirt almost with all the different recruitment sources that are out there. So there are internal ones like your employees referring folks or you promoting someone from within the organization. And then there are many external ones. So there are the job boards, there are top job boards like Indeed and ZipRecruiter and LinkedIn. And some of those job boards will also blast your job announcement out to other job boards as well. And so you want to look at those job boards to see what makes sense. There's technology, IT job boards. There's job boards for all of the different industries. So that's part of your strategy for a position, is thinking about, where am I going to advertise? What is my budget for that? And how do I go about getting this position filled? You know, there are publications, professional, organizational publications. There are diversity recruitment resources. There's your company website. So if you use an applicant tracking system, most applicant tracking systems allow you to publish your posting not only on your website, but on other job boards as well. There's social media and referrals and job fairs, career days, and also agencies, third-party recruiters that you can use to help you as well. So thinking about that and deciding what's going to be your approach to attract people is also important. Next slide. All right, so I mentioned a little bit about the applicant tracking system. This is a software technology, and there are many out there, but it allows you to develop a pipeline of talent. Essentially, over the years that HR Anew has been in business, we have developed a pipeline of over 100,000 people that have been in our applicant tracking system. And so it's a knowledge asset management tool that you can go back to. You know, you might find somebody might apply for a position that you're advertising that might not be right for the position you're advertising, but they may be right for another position down the road. So having a good applicant tracking system where you can go back and say, oh, I remember candidate B, you know, would be possibly a good fit for this. Let me pull up their resume and reach out to them. So it allows you to create a data bank of information. That's what job boards do. When you use their resume databases, they're collecting that data over years and years and years. And then they're selling it to you to gain access to it. So you can also do that as an employer, and your applicant tracking system is going to allow you to specialize in hiring attracting the kinds of people that you want to hire now and or in the future. And it also, the applicant tracking system and the candidate management system allows you to ensure that you are compliant from a recruitment perspective. Most of them have the built-in wherewithal to ensure that you're not going to run afoul from an employment law perspective. And then it helps with the candidate experience, because there are different things you can do from the applicant tracking system. For example, send them a communication, and you're building that relationship and that rapport with your candidates. Next slide. So now we're at the interview process. So we want to ensure that we have a process that's designed to help us get the right people in the company in the right position. So the typical steps in this process, again, is the position description, but also interview questions, having a good interview guide, creating job announcements and advertising your positions, reviewing resumes to see if people meet the requirements and the qualifications that you've advertised in accordance with the position description, scheduling interviews, sending those candidate assessments if you decide to implement that process, and then conducting your preliminary interview. And then if the person gets beyond that, you may bring them back for second and or third interviews with other people that are part of your organization. So HR may be the first person conducting the interview, or someone else in your company, or a third party if you've outsourced HR. And then from there, the hiring manager, other team members, or senior leadership. So what we do for our clients is ensure that the folks making the hiring decisions don't have to see more than 2 to 5 resumes. But to get to those 2 to 5 candidates, we've probably gone through 100 people or more in terms of reviewing resumes. So we take all that burden off of a client. So that's what your HR person or your outsourced HR provider or your third-party recruiter can do for you. You also want to ensure that when you select a finalist, you check references. One important thing about the reference checking process is most HR departments will only verify dates of employment, job title, sometimes salary, sometimes not. However, candidates should be able to produce the names of professional references, the name, the email address, the phone number of folks that they've reported to, clients they've supported, people who can really speak to their performance. And so when we're checking references on candidates, those are the kinds of references that we're checking so that we can give our clients accurate information in terms of what these persons are saying about the candidate's experience and background, what it was like to work with them, what their performance was like, et cetera. And then conducting that background and criminal check and the alcohol and drug testing. Those are other key components as well. Now, it is 9:10. The next slide is the 10 best interview questions. This video is about 12 minutes. It's an excellent video. I want to make sure that I have time for your questions. So what I'm going to do is just say to you, you can watch this video on YouTube. It's called 10 Interview Questions to Reveal Behavioral Quirks. It's by Vanessa Van Evans. It's excellent. And she's got 10 really good questions that she's come up with that help you to get more insight about a candidate, who they are and what they're about. We also have interview questions here at HR Anew, questions you should ask, questions you shouldn't ask during the interview process, but this is a good video and resource. I'm sorry, we just don't have enough time, but I want to make sure that I have enough time to answer your questions. And if we have time at the end, we can come back to it. All right, next slide. So interview questions not to ask in the interview process. We never want to ask questions about people's age and race and ethnicity, gender, sex, all these things you see on the screen. These are questions not to ask. They are illegal, considered illegal questions in the interview process. Now, if something is important to you that you need to know, there may be a way to ask a question that teases out the information, but you cannot ask questions pertaining to these particular areas. It will bring harm to your organization. So be mindful of this. In Maryland, we cannot ask people about their salary history. So there are some states where you can't ask people about their salary history. But here's an example of how you get to that. So I ask candidates, what are your salary expectations? And then they tell me what their salary expectations are. And then my next question is, well, why do you think that salary is a fair salary for you? Okay, that still helps you to get to some information. And sometimes the candidate's going to say, because in my current job or my last job, I'm making this. and this is why I believe I should be making, I should receive this salary. Or, the market for this particular position is this range. And this is the range that I believe I should be in based on my experience, my credentials, et cetera. So it's important information to have, but there's a way to get to things that don't cause us to run afoul from an employment law perspective. Next slide. So I talked about the due diligence already, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this slide, but just a reminder that the interview process, the interview is only one piece of the process. All of these other things are part of the process as well. The feedback from your other team members and colleagues that might be a part of interviewing the candidates, they're part of the process as well. So all of that information gathered together should help you make a pretty good decision about if someone's a good fit for your company or not. Next slide. So we've kind of gone through the process of recruitment and hiring people. At the end of it, we want to evaluate how is it working, what's working well that we want to continue, what's not working well that we want to stop, or what's not working well that we want to enhance and or improve upon. And then find those weaknesses or gaps in our process to maximize the strength of your strategy. This will help you to ensure that you're getting a good return on your investment and that you're hiring the right people for your company, because it is very, very costly to have to replace someone, not only from the perspective of your time and money associated with the recruiting process, but all of the time you've invested in a person being in your company, that orientation, that onboarding process. The research shows it takes 6 months to a year for someone to learn their job. And so if it doesn't work out, that's a lot of lost time and it sets an employer back. So this evaluation and refining process is a really important part of measuring our success. Next slide. And then finally, on the orientation and onboarding process, we've talked about these things already, but ensuring that you have a good orientation and onboarding process enables your employees to grow and to flourish in the company. So we want to be thinking as employers, not only about the position that we're looking to hire someone to fill today, but we want them to stay with our company over the long term. So what's that career path look like for them? Where can they go in our company to continue to grow and be a part of the organization? Because we're making an investment in them coming into the company. When I first started HR Anew, I felt like I was just hiring people and developing them, and my clients were taking them all. So I was like, having all this turnover, it's costing me. They're taking my great people. So I had to come up with a strategy to implement, some career pathing so that I could keep some good people in the company that I was hiring. So this is a really critical part to our ability to be successful. And so these are just some ideas and thoughts that I hope you found helpful. On the next slide, I'm asking you, what questions do you have? So we can just, move on to the next slide. Yes. What questions do you have that I can answer for you?